Hi there, folks, and welcome back to Nippon Trading International's Japan Real Estate Podcast. I'm your host, Ziv Nakajima again, and this podcast is brought to you, among others, by Emil Gorgis of realestate.jp. He's a Tokyo real estate agent who specializes in serving international or mixed nationality families who are looking for the perfect family home. So Emil's an Australian. He's been living here in Japan for over 2 decades now, and for about half of that time, he's been buying, selling, and managing real estate properties in Tokyo on behalf of his own family and a great many happy clients. And he also acts as a mortgage broker on behalf of his clients. So he's got dedicated loan officers in many of the Japanese mega banks. And if you're a regular listener of the podcast, you probably already know him from our JREP, the Japan Real Estate Experts Panel sessions, which means that you're already aware of the fact that the man is an absolute fountain of wisdom on all things related to real estate in Japan, and in particular to family homes, the greater Tokyo metropolitan area, and mortgages. And most importantly, he's incredibly generous with his time and advice, which he's more than happy to provide at no cost or commitment to anyone asking. So if you've been thinking about buying your home in Tokyo, but you've been sitting on the fence for a while, or you just want to have a chat in English with a real expert, drop him a line on sales@realestate.jp. Hit him up today and start exploring your options. All right, so we've got quite the special guest on the podcast for you today. Steven Liew from Singapore, who's a good friend and also used to live here in Fukuoka City up till a few years ago, is the Director for Public Policy for the Asia Pacific region at AirBnb. And as you can imagine, we, and especially Tracy Northcott, our resident short-term stay expert on the Japan Real Estate Experts panel, really wanted to pick his brain and hear from him about everything the company is and has been up to here in Japan. So we talk about the company's history and philosophy, all the way from founding and until nowadays, the legislation changes that occurred here in Japan back in 2018 and how that has affected the market, Airbnb's efforts or lobbying, if you will, of both the national and municipal governments here in Japan, and a whole lot of about their work with hosts, the Japanese Kominka Association, how they get local residents on board with short-term stays in their neighborhoods, their thoughts and work on akiya, rural rejuvenation projects, and much, much more. So a really fun conversation with someone who's really in the thick of things as far as short-term stays in Japan go. I think you're really going to enjoy this one. All right, the Japan Real Estate Experts panel is back in session, and we'll skip our own private intros today because we've got a special guest on with us. This is Mr. Steven Liew of Singapore.
Hello.
Formerly of Fukuoka City, best city in the world, and he's written about it to some extent himself. And also, I'll let you introduce yourself with the title and everything. But Steven has been working with Airbnb for quite some time now, and we thought it would be a great idea to have him on the show so we can pick his brain a little bit. So, Steven, please introduce yourself.
Thank you, Ziv, and also thank you, Tracy, for having me. So my name is Steven Liew. Born and bred in Singapore, but as Ziv has said, I spent a couple of years living and working out of Fukuoka. Probably the best city in the world. I would agree with that. Definitely the best city in Japan, in my humble opinion. So I've been working for Airbnb now, coming up to my 3rd year. I joined during COVID, which was a very exciting opportunity to join a travel tech company in the middle of COVID when all travels were stopped, for the most part. But it's been a really enjoyable few years. So I'm very happy to be here. Hope I can share a little bit more about some of the fun stuff, exciting stuff that we're doing in Japan.
Look, I really appreciate you coming on and actually spending time. I know you're super busy. And I guess I just wanted to sort of set the stage a little bit for people listening that your area of genius is really working on public policy, working with the federal government and also massaging that relationship between, the hosts like myself, local governments and also federal governments and, Airbnb. So is that a good characterization of where you sit?
Yeah, so as you rightly said, I work for the public policy department within Airbnb. We are a small and mighty team within the company, just a couple hundred of us across the whole globe. And if you think about the reach of Airbnb, we are in more than 110,000 cities across 220 countries. And every single city would want to try to have some sort of interaction with us. Some of them would want to regulate us. Some of them would want to get us to partner with them to promote their city as a destination. So and some of them is a combination of both.
Mm-hmm.
On the one hand, they want to regulate us, but then on the other hand, they also say, hey, look, we recognize that we need you for to promote tourism to our city. How can we work together? So the public policy team in Airbnb is a little bit different from a lot of the other public policy teams in tech companies I worked for in the past. My sense is that it is both a team that engages with government to shape the regulations in a sensible way, but at the same time, it's also a organization that go out there to work with other, whether it's government or NGOs or even individuals, to figure out ways to promote the concept of home sharing, promote tourism in a sustainable manner. Yeah. So those are the things that we spend a lot of our time working on.
Mm. And look, the fact that minpaku, as a rule is allowed in Japan is really a testament to the hard work that you guys did back in 2016, 2015. And I'm not trying to, puff you up, but it's the reality that there was a lot of backlash when the perfect storm of increased tourism to a gray zone in the regulations and a lot of hosts that were opportunistic. And to be frank, a lot of them were doing it badly. And so there was backlash in the community, and rightly so. But through the hard work of Airbnb, we got to a point where, the 180 days, it's been, regulated to that point. And I want to hear how you think that's been from then to now, and then also, what as hosts we have to look forward to moving from now.
So Tracy, I think first of all, I want to say that it wasn't just Airbnb that was, working hard to get to the right place when it comes to regulation. Our host in Japan also play a really, really important part in that conversation. And I want to also give due credit to the national government for having the foresight to say, we need a national law. We need to figure out a way where we can allow this new way to travel to grow, but at the same time deal with some of the concerns of the local community. I'm not Japanese, and none of us here are Japanese, but we all live in Japan for different periods of time. I think all of us have a very deep appreciation for the need of social harmony within Japan. It's a very homogeneous society. There is a very, although unspoken, but very clear set of norms of how people should behave and should not behave. And I think when you introduce a guest that may or may not know all these norms into a community where it is a community of a lot of people who understand those norms and expect everybody to behave along those norms, problems will occur. So I think the law was a good starting point to say, okay, these are some of the behaviors that need to be expected of all of you, whether you're a host or a guest, you have to behave this way. And also, as the platform that is mediating this, these are the things that you need to do to make sure that your host and a guest behave in a certain way. So I think for me, coming into the Airbnb, after those laws were passed, I would give a lot of credit to my team members who are still around, who went through the whole process. It was a tough process of negotiating for the laws to be passed in the right way. Implementing the law was a very tough one. And then with the help of a lot of our hosts, I think we are now at a very good place where, we believe we have a group of very good players, people who are responsible, people who want to be good hosts, not just to our guests, but also good neighbors to their communities. Yeah.
For sure. I mean, look, I take my community responsibility extremely seriously as a host. We made the decision to jump through all those hoops and get regulated because I felt it was really needed. But also that my business revolves around educating my guests on that. But they appreciate that. The people that are coming to stay with me are the ones that want to learn, that want to feel the culture, like at the DNA level, that want to, that want to show their kids what it's like to live in another country and experience another culture. So it's not just a place to stay when you're going out and going to Disneyland or going to have a look at the sightseeing. It's you have a deep appreciation of the place where you're staying, even if it's just for a week or two. So I get that, and I see, and I take that responsibility seriously, and I also spend a lot of time helping my guests be great community members.
I think that was initially when I first heard about Airbnb a good few years ago. That was initially what I felt Airbnb was all about. I know that these days it became a lot more than that, and in many cases it's kind of a hotel alternative. But I thought the original impression that I had of Airbnb was kind of like couch surfing on steroids. You know what I mean? It was come into someone's home, share in a local neighborhood, share in local customs, and get somebody local to actually show you the ropes. I think that was the philosophy behind it. Sorry, just a quick, Emil, do you want to quickly say hello before we get back into it?
Sure. Hey, sorry I'm late. Hey, my name's Emil. I'm a real estate agent here in Tokyo. Thank you so much for joining, Steven.
Hi, Emil.
We've been excited to get you on for some time. I think we had to reschedule once in the past, but I'm glad you're on. I had 12 Airbnb listings in Tokyo at the peak, and due to regulation and then COVID as well, I'm out of that game. But I was heavily in sort of early on from 2015. The real sort of boom days early on, when everyone, I think even Airbnb, was learning the ropes in Japan, navigating that. So thank you for your time. But I'll just keep listening for now, and I'll try to catch up.
Yeah,
and I hope I'll be able to convince you to come back on as an Airbnb host.
No, he's getting real estate places for me to then go and manage, because he gets it, right? He knows. He gets the business, and then he has his real estate business, and then I see real estate as my place of business. So because I run a hospitality business and he runs a real estate business, so we're like intertwined. So we do a lot of work together, actually.
Awesome. And we're seeing that also across a lot of our markets within Japan, that I think to Ziv's point, it seems like couch surfing, room sharing on steroids. I think to a certain extent, you're right. We've been around for 15 years since the founding of the company, but the original idea of Airbnb was, three young French graduates trying to make it in San Francisco, having problems making rent, and then they realized that one of the good way to make some extra money was to inflate 3 air mattresses, leave them around their living room, go on Craigslist and say, guys, we've got 3 air mattresses. If you need really cheap place to stay, come stay with us. Hence the name. It was originally called Airbnb and Breakfast. The idea was Brian, Joe, and Nate would bring their guests around to have breakfast in their favorite cafe in San Francisco after staying a night on their air mattresses. So I think that original DNA of providing affordable place for people to stay for a short period of time, allowing you the opportunity to stay in a very local environment, but not in a nameless big chain hotel in the middle of the tourist area, but actually staying with locals, providing you that human connection between you and between the host and the guest. I think all of those are the original DNA of Airbnb, which we would like to believe that even as more and more hosts become professionalized, we still want to hang on to that DNA. We want to hang on to that magic, that it is a human connection ultimately that really matters.
Mm. And so, I spend a lot of time actually working with my community. And by myself, I'm knocking on doors, I'm making friends with the neighbors, I'm like making relationships with small businesses and the local mum and dad, like mom and pop, I think in American English, like the soba shop and the yakitori place, and I'm able to give that local knowledge, that pass that forward through to to these businesses who understand what we do, and they appreciate that we are bringing new money, new blood into these, in some of these communities. So I think that's going a long way to to help people who are not in the tourist industry, people who are not, embedded in what we do, to understand the whole home sharing thing and actually be a bit more, familiar with it. Because I think when it first came in, there was, especially in Tokyo, or even other neighborhoods in Japan, it was like, oh, who are all these people? Like, where are they from? Are they bringing, are they ne'er-do-wells? Are they going to, upset our charm and our, the usual cadence of our community, which is
to be fair, a lot of them are still a little bit like that, especially in the more rural areas.
But for sure, but what I want to hear from Steven is, I've done this for myself because it benefits my business. How is Airbnb planning to address that in the broader sense, to assist hosts who don't go out and do that like I do? So
thanks for the question. I think, let me give you first a macro picture. I wanted to know what is the economic impact that we have in any markets that we're in. And we commissioned Oxford Economics to do a study of all the Asia Pacific market during the period of 12 months up to March 2023 this year. So we look back 12 months and see what happened. How much money do we bring to the different markets? And when we look at Japan, our guests spend a combined of 327 billion Japanese yen. That's almost 2.2 billion US dollars in Japan.
mm-hmm.
They supported directly and indirectly something like 42,000 jobs in Japan during that 12 months period. I think that is the macro impact. Now, when we unpacked how did all of this happen, so some of them are through individual efforts like yours, where you went out to build that local guide or local network of restaurants, izakaya, cafes, and laundromats and what have you. So, but we have also done a couple of things from the Airbnb side. One, we work a lot through our host clubs, and we have a lot of host clubs across Japan. You can go onto our responsible hosting page on Airbnb. I want to be a host, and if you click Japan, they show you a whole bunch of the different host clubs, including a few in Tokyo and one in Fukuoka. Through these host clubs, a lot of the more active hosts, they come together, form a group. They will actually develop their own city guides or their own town guides. They would even do things like leave behind printed guides of all their recommended izakayas and cafes and restaurants and what have you within the walking distance of the place that they operate. So I think that's one thing through the host clubs are doing. And Airbnb, what we try to do is that we organize those host clubs in the beginning for them to get them started. And then regularly we will provide them with briefing, provide them with updates on products, updates on policies. And hopefully through working with these host clubs, we can kind of amplify the impact that we have on the local community, positive impacts. Now, The other thing that we have been experimenting over the last year and a half, 2 years, is we have started making deals with the local shotengai. So one of the biggest deal that we've done last year, and I went in summer to Osaka to sign the deal, was we signed an MOU with the association of all the shotengai within Osaka city itself, and the multiple shotengai. And then the association partnership with us was to promote both short-term rental stays within walking distance from the shotengai.
Quick explanation just to our listeners who are not living in Japan, what a shotengai is.
Shopping streets, yeah. And then in return, our host would also provide guides that are produced by the Shotengai Association that say, hey, within 100 meters from you, this is a Shotengai. You can get the best soba in this particular store. You can get the best yakitori in this other izakaya. So I think that was a great way for us to formalize and also build it at scale in terms of how do you publicize what is available around you in your neighborhood.
Mm-hmm. And that was an Airbnb initiative. So you empowered them. Did you fund that? I was just curious about what that looked like.
I mean, we kick in some money in terms of the press events and then some of the content creation, but for the most part, it was an effort that the shop owners wanted, the retailers wanted that kind of exposure to our guests. Mm-hmm. They were looking for a way to basically diversify their guest traffic. Right? I mean, traditionally, if you hope to get a lot of visitors to your shopping street, maybe you work with the local hotel concierge. Mm-hmm. You work with tour groups to bring traffic to your shopping street. So they identified that short-term rental guests is another very interesting group of visitors that they want. So they reach out to us. We also like the idea. We wanted to be able to contribute some ways into the local community to boost local spending. That's what we are very, very big on. So that's how we ended up partnering with them.
Well, so I love it that you've actually given a roadmap, these are the pathways that hosts can and businesses can work together. So that's extremely useful. That's for the business relationships. How about for domestic demand? That we in the business, 99.9% of our business right now is all inbound. It would be fantastic if we could see a lot more domestic demand. I mean, I'm in Tokyo, but I'm not sure. What does that look like in other markets? Is it like rural areas? Is that local use or is that still inbound tourists?
So that's a very good question, and what I can share with you is that we always look at any market as there are three parts to it. There is the inbound demand from foreign guests coming to Japan. There is also the outbound demand. That means people who live in Japan, when they travel out of Japan, we would like them to use Airbnb. And then the last segment is within Japan. When people travel within Japan, people who are living in Japan, when they are traveling within Japan, we would love to have them use Airbnb. Mm-hmm. Now, I think all of you have been in this business for a while, and you've lived in Japan for a long time. You probably have already realized that most of the Airbnb business really is about inbound at this moment, right? So these are the two segments of the market, the stuff that we are going to work on in 2024 and beyond. These are very, very important market. Japan, from our study, I think is the third largest travel market in the world. So it is important for us to be able to capture that. And a big part of that travel market spending is actually domestic travels, Japanese traveling within Japan. That's an important segment, and it's also something that we are working on very, very hard right now, and also into 2024 and 25, and the years ahead to get more Japanese to book Airbnb when, let's say, they are visiting Matsuyama,
Mhm.
rather than stay in a hotel in Matsuyama.
Yeah. Look, I'd love to see. I think that's a really big way for just the general population to, to get an appetite and, see what, because like I said, we've had a really big transition from a bit of backlash and a bit of like, your rejection of the whole home sharing thing to moving forward to for people to actually experience for themselves and recognize that, that this is a good thing. So that home sharing, because it's a completely new concept. Ryokans have always been there, but there hasn't really been a big domestic appetite for home sharing. Yeah.
Yeah, so a couple of things that we observed during COVID, because as you know, during COVID, Japan's borders were closed, right? But then when we looked at the kind of bookings that actually happen on the Airbnb platform in Japan, obviously they are being done. The bookings are being done by people who live in Japan at that point in time. And then when we try to unpack what do they want, because a lot of them will be either Japanese or foreigners who are living in Japan during COVID. So when we look at what do they want from their Airbnb stay, we found that a lot of them were living and working on Airbnb. A lot of them were folks that were living in, say, Tokyo, Osaka, the big cities, and small apartments. They just wanted to get out. They wanted to go somewhere where they can breathe fresh air. They don't have to wear a mask. There are no one around them. They can work from there while enjoying a little bit of private time with their family. So the amenities that were required by these domestic guests became very important stuff that we work with our hosts to say, hey, look, your property in the past was catering to foreign guests. Now you're catering to domestic guests. These are the things that are very important for domestic guests. You need to put in this stuff. So those were the data insights that we were able to share with our host to encourage them to have amenities that actually and services that can be attractive to both types of guests. But I think it's a process. It's going to take a bit of time.
Sure.
I've got a quick question on that.
Yep.
Not specifically, more specific than just residential policy. Part of the big shift in Airbnb legislation back when the new infrastructure was introduced was to, in practice, almost completely lock out minpaku stays in mansions, in condo units. I mean, by virtually making the default not allowed, and then allowing owner unions, the ones that choose to, which is a tiny percentage of them, to open that up via the owners union rulebook. Is there any way that you think either hosts or Airbnb, obviously we can't 100% control the guests, but maybe involving guests as well, to somehow make that more feasible to them?
I'm not exactly sure I understand your question.
How do we make it appealing to unit owners and owner unions in condo blocks to be a bit more open to minpaku?
I think what we have tried to do is to educate our hosts and our guests, that they are really living among local people. People live there, so certain types of behaviors are to be expected, and certain types of behaviors are not going to be condoned. So I think reducing the noise and nuisance to your neighbors is one of the main reasons why the Minpaku law was actually enacted. There were, the government was getting way too many complaints of for want of a better word, bad behaving guests, and also maybe absentee hosts or hosts who were not doing the right thing by controlling the behavior of the guests. So the law was introduced. Do we think that the law could be a little bit liberalize and reform to make it a little easier for people to host in ordinary apartment buildings? Yes, obviously. And we're in constant conversation with the national government to make it easier for hosting to happen. Now, is the balance that I think we are all trying to achieve, whether it's the government or it's Airbnb, we're trying to find a balance where we can have a sustainable way for our host to host, but not cause so much disturbance and disamenities to the local residents, people who live there long term, that there will be an uproar, there will be backlash. I mean, I lived in Fukuoka for 2 years. My apartment unit is on the first floor, so I'm just the one level above the ground floor, and I get annoyed when people drag the trolley bag at 3 a.m. in the morning along the road and it goes at 3 a.m., right? So to me, when I think back to that 3 a.m. when I get awakened, I understand where the intention of the law is. Now, the question that we want to try to address is, okay, have we put in place good policies, good control measures? Have we done enough education for both hosts and guests, such that the evils that the law was trying to get rid of, those evils have now been properly managed or properly mitigated. They can now be a little bit more freer in terms of allowing more properties to be hosted.
Can I just, change tacks a little bit on this, because, urban hosting and rural hosting are two completely different animals, and I think in every country that you're operating, and in Japan that's no different. The people who come into urban centers, they're they are doing there's a lot of people in a small space, and noise is traveling, but and that's a different product to the product of going and having a staycation, or a stay in a charming old property that's been renovated, or in a village. So I'm gonna allow you to talk about the opportunities for people who are looking to renovate, pick up some cheaper akiya in rural areas, and renovate those specifically to capture that staycation feel, that country mini break feeling. So I'm going to let you brag on about what Airbnb have done, because I think it's brilliant. I think it's absolutely brilliant. So
thank you, Tracy. I think you're spot on. The kind of visitors that we have, the travelers that we have in Japan, a lot of them are very seasoned travelers. What we're trying to encourage them to do is say, hey, look, this is like the 20th time that you visited Tokyo. It's about time that you venture outside of Tokyo. Go check out the other parts of Japan. And there are really, really interesting stuff out there. And then the way that we're trying to encourage people to go is through our product, and also through some of the things that we do with the local community. So on the product side, we have introduced something called categories. So if you go and open our app, or you go onto our platform, you'll see little interesting small icons of different types of houses at the top of the page. And the idea behind it is that we use those icons to represent different types of properties or different types of activities that could hopefully attract you to go somewhere else. So you don't make your travel decision based on, oh, I want to go to Tokyo, but rather, hey, I want to stay in a historical home, or I want to stay in a ryokan. Where can I find the next available ryokan? Where's the next available historical home? Incidentally, we now have around 650 historical homes listed in Japan, through a process of both machine reading the different description and photograph, and also some human curation. We have identified 600 kominkas that we think are worthy of promotion within the historical homes icon. And then for ryokans, we have about 320 of them that we have checked and make sure that they are actually ryokans. A lot of them are actually not in the main cities. They're usually within 1 hour drive or 1 hour train ride, and you will end up in a really beautiful place, at a beautiful town that is not going to be over touristed. You will get a chance to stay in a architectural heritage of Japan, to be fully immersed in Japan culture. So that's the product side. On the policy side, we donated $1 million to the Japan Kominka Association. The donation is meant to be to help in their grants, which they hand out to people who want to renovate their kominkas. So the JKA set the guidelines, the criteria, and they do the selection. They make the decision as to which kominka they want to give a grant. I know that they are handing out grants that are about 5 million yen per grant to help with the renovation. It's not much, but I think it's still good money, 5 million to help with the renovation. This year alone, I think they've already done 2 rounds of application and selection where they handed out some money. We're trying to add more money to our donation to the JKA. I have just secured another $225,000 to be handed out to JKA for next year. The idea really is that we believe through providing attractive homes a little bit away from the main cities where they're over touristed, we will be able to draw the tourism away and then spread out a bit, help out with the rural revitalization, help out with reducing the level of this amenity caused by over tourism.
Mm-hmm.
We interrupt this broadcast to tell you about Tokyo Family Stays. They're a short-term rentals company in Tokyo, and they offer a home away from home experience, which is just perfect for remote working, quarantining, if that's still a thing, or if you just need somewhere quiet to get away from the world. They offer a variety of options for families, corporate relocations, or even if you're simply transitioning between homes in Tokyo. The properties are super comfortable, tastefully furnished, fully equipped with all amenities, and they accommodate up to 10 people. So really the only thing you'll need to bring with you is your toothbrush and maybe a change of clothes. They come with fast unlimited wireless internet, dedicated workspaces, and fully equipped kitchens, and they're just a delight to stay in. Fantastic alternative to Japanese business hotels, which if you've ever stayed in one, you probably know they're tiny, they're noisy, fine for a night or two if you're on your own, but longer term or with a family, you'll probably feel you're in a jail cell very quickly in a Japanese business hotel. So if you want to give yourself a sense of space and freedom by renting a real home with comfortable Western beds, including all the necessities like baby bedding, children's toys, high chairs, etc., you definitely want to reach out to Tokyo Family Stays. They've been at it for over a decade. They're a fully licensed minpaku or short-term stay operator. And as a special bonus for our viewers and listeners, they're also throwing in a breakfast basket upon arrival for anyone who books and mentions the Japan Real Estate Podcast or NTI. And not only for guests, if you're a property owner, you've got an investment property that you want to tweak for higher profit, or a holiday home that you want to rent out when you're not using it via short-term stays, drop them a line today, see how they can help you maximize your property's income. And again, as a special bonus to our viewers and listeners, they're also offering a free audit of your existing short-term stay listings without any obligation whatsoever. So feel free to reach out to them at tokyofamilystays.com. Well worth a visit. And again, if you're in the market for a family home in or around the Tokyo metropolitan area, Emil's your man. Don't be shy to reach out to him as well at sales@realestate.jp. And now, back to the podcast.
Mm-hmm. We get a lot of people listening to this podcast or the YouTube channel, or we get a lot of people who are very, very interested in buying some of these cheaper akiyas. They're interested in, if they know which end of the hammer to use, they want to do some renovations themselves. So we have a lot of people who are very interested in this market now, and how they, knowing that there's an ability to go and get additional subsidies to help. 5 million yen actually goes a long way when you're doing a lot of DIY. When they apply for this money through so JKA is the Japan Kominka Association, so they have to be a member. Do you know what other criteria it is to make the application?
I think the JKA has set out a whole list of criteria, and most of it is around the construction of the house. You know, it has to fit a certain build criteria, and then also the future plan has to also conform to the certain build criteria that they have already set down. So a lot, because the JKA is basically an association of craftsmen, architects, historians, heritage professors. These are guys that their goal really is to preserve and protect the architectural heritage of Japan. So the criteria mostly is around making sure that you don't end up building a gigantic mansion out of the kominka. So that's really what it's all about.
So do they have to, to get this money, do they have to say, well, I'm planning to actually list this as a short-term rental, as an Airbnb? No. It's just you. Okay.
We gave the money not for purely commercial reason. Obviously we, as a profit-making company, there are some commercial reasons behind making that donation, but a big part of it was also to show, to put some skin in the game behind what we have been publicly saying. Like, we want tourists to disperse. We believe in sustainability. We believe in not pouring new concrete, not tearing down stuff and then building something brand new. We believe in the importance of showing the true authentic side of a place to our guests. And because of all this belief, that's why we gave that money. So we have never said to the JKA or to the recipients of the grants that, oh, you have to list it on Airbnb. We do provide support to these recipients and say, hey, one of the ways that you could hopefully be able to monetize a little bit of your home, because it's a very expensive endeavor to build and to maintain historical homes, is maybe you want to consider short-term rental. When you're not using it yourself for whatever reason, you want to consider using it as a short-term accommodation.
Or this, I've seen a lot of lovely listings in places like Shikoku and Kyushu, where you can actually go and live with the family and traveling. I want also people to, if they're listening, when you're traveling outside of Japan, go and stay with a Japanese family and really get to know people, and that you will not be disappointed. Just the charm and the generosity and the kindness of actually meeting real people is such a joy for me.
But that works. Sorry, go ahead, Steven.
I want to use this as an opportunity to make a plug for one of my staff. Someone on my public policy team in Japan. He used to live and work in Tokyo. During COVID, like many Japanese, he ran away from Tokyo and drove around with a tank of gas with his girlfriend at the time and try to figure out where else they want to live. He ended up finding a beautiful farmhouse in a little town called Fujimi in Nagano, in the mountains of Nagano. He took about 2 or 3 months to convince the old farmer to sell him the farmhouse. It is an L-shaped farmhouse, which he is currently doing the rebuilding. So his plan is that he will live in one of the farmhouse, and then the other one will be listed on Airbnb. And we have a lot of hosts like him, where they have decided that they have enough of the big cities. They want to explore a different way of life, and through finding this more affordable akiyas and kominkas and kuras and nokas out there, they managed to find that opportunity to do it.
That works though for self-managed, for people who are renting out parts of their home, but in the rural communities, it's very challenging to find the licensed management company that's required. They just don't set up shop in these locations if there's not enough business for them, right?
I think Steve, I think it's a process. This is something still relatively, I think is a concept which is well known within the big cities. But once you go away from the big cities, there's a little bit of lack of awareness as to how exactly do you do this? What are the economic upside? What are the potentials? So on our part at Airbnb, we've been encouraging a lot of these what we call host management company to branch out beyond the big cities, because within the big cities they're very competitive. So I personally have been speaking to two HMCs. One is based in Tokyo, the other one based in Fukuoka, to say, hey, look, I want you guys to go out 1 hour away, because we have a whole bunch of kominkas around Tokyo. We've got a whole bunch of kominkas around Fukuoka, and they're looking for help. They're looking for ways to make the check-in process easier, to make their calendar management all digitized, and then also organize all the services needed. How do you do that? So that's one thing that we're trying to do in terms of educating and also spreading the services of the HMCs. The other way that we're working is actually with the local government. So coming back to my staff in Fujimi, he took it upon himself to engage with the local government of Fujimi to say, hey, I know unemployment is a major problem in your little town. That's why your young people are all running away. We also know that you have a whole bunch of akiyas that you're trying to offload to investors and also operators and people who want to live in Fujimi. But these guys, they may need help to clean up the big house. They may need help to do the check-in and check-out. Can we figure out a way where we can also employ the people who are unemployed, people who are looking for a job, so that they can stay on in Fujimi and benefit from this tourism or hospitality business that's being developed in Fujimi. So that is also something that we're actively trying to do as we go into a town and city to promote the idea of home sharing, promote the repurposing of akiyas and kominkas. We also look at the ancillary service that are needed to support this industry.
That goes back to what Tracy was saying before about the hosts have to play a big part in changing that environment to make it more feasible for everyone involved.
Yeah.
Look, I'm a big fan of picking up properties that are a little bit quirky. I mean, this is me in Tokyo. I like to pick up properties that are not new and shiny, and that they're a little bit quirky, and maybe properties that a regular person is not wanting to rent or buy, and actually turning them into a charming short-term rental. So I do that a lot. Also because they're they might be a little bit cheaper, or it's it's just a nice runway for me to acquire properties to list. Which my question is like about sustainability as well. Like sustainability, if you look at all of the travel and tourism stats that that companies put out, like that travelers, sustainability is like so high on the desirable what people want. So how are Airbnb showing that the sustainability smarts that hosts have put in place? Is there a way to showcase the hosts that are doing it well, the hosts that are being sustainable and not using single-use plastics, and actually doing all of the recycling and also renovating other properties? Is there a way that Airbnb are planning to celebrate that, and maybe to help get those hosts booked?
Interesting that you asked this question, because during COVID, I think it was back in 2021. End of 2021, we commissioned the Economist Group to do a study. And the question that we wanted the Economist Group to answer was, what would travelers look for when we can all travel again? What is the number one thing that was important, top of mind for them? Around 67% of the respondents told us that sustainability was the number one criterion when they can travel again.
Mm-hmm.
And And then when we unpack what sustainability means to the 67% of the people who responded, environmental sustainability obviously is one of them. How, are you using single-use plastic? Are you using those little bottles of shampoos and conditioners and body wash, or are you using refillable stuff? Right? Are you sourcing your linens locally? Are you sourcing your hand towels from your local community? So those were the questions around environment. The other aspect of sustainability that was very interesting for us to see was the importance of that preservation of heritage, preservation of culture, preservation of the local customs. So even in the minds of the travelers that say sustainability was important, this was an aspect that was important for them. So we have started working on this second aspect because it was something easier. It's a lower hanging fruit for us. We're into, we use category, we use our donation at JK to encourage people to say, hey, go enjoy these older houses. They're very, very beautiful. The experience is magical. The first aspect of it is I think is a work in progress. That's all I want to say, because we are a little bit slow in the game here in APAC. Some of the things that I want to port over from our global practices is coming up with some schemes where we can work with local partners in Japan, for example, to encourage our host to build their homes in a way that they would use less electricity, use less water. How can you do better insulation, for example, so you don't need to go to do so much heating? How do you have better ventilation in the way you design your home so that you don't need air conditioning during summer? Can we use more sustainable source of energy? Is there ways that we can do solar panel in a way, and can we encourage you? How can we incentivize you to use solar power, for example? So all of those things, we have different experimentation across the world. I'm now actually in talks with my counterparts who are leading this kind of global initiative and try to port them over to APAC in 2024. So watch this space. I hope to have some announcement to do for Japan, because I think the whole, in terms of the awareness of what is needed to be sustainable, the awareness level in Japan is definitely very, very high in Asia. We just need to convert that awareness to actual action. I think
those are all very relevant factors for not just hosts. They're very relevant factors for any foreigner purchasing a holiday home, say, or even a family home in Japan. They're not as common here as they are in other countries. So that's definitely a much needed initiative.
Yes, and also, you brought up electricity supply chain, and that's something that I know other countries are really looking at. Japan is still, I think, behind in terms of public policy of electricity supply, use of geothermal, for example. And I think there are certain places that are bringing that in to people who own houses, which won't make TEPCO very happy, but that's not my problem. I think, it's too important. The sustainability question is too important on a global scale, not just in hosting and not just in this field. So, please keep up that pressure, because it's it's what guests are asking for, but I think it's what us as humans need to be asking for as well. So
and there's a very interesting aspect of traveling to Japan that I find, at least for me as a foreigner, I find very fascinating. When I first arrived in Japan, the biggest challenge I have was not the language. It was actually trying to sort out the garbage that I generate when I live anywhere. And I was staying in Airbnb for 3 months, different Airbnbs across Fukuoka. And then through that 3 months of constant reminder from my host as to how to sort out the garbage, I learned. And I would like to believe that in some ways, guests that come to Japan and book Airbnb, I hope they go home with some of these ideas in mind and say, oh my God, we really need to sort out our garbage. And when you sort out your garbage, you see how much garbage you're generating, especially those plastic bottles. And then you ask yourself, do you really need to buy that bottled water? Why can't you just bring your own bottle from home and then refill it? So that's that. When I now look back, I kind of laugh at the challenge I had and the frustration I felt. But now I also feel like, hey, our host is doing a pretty good CSR job in promoting being more environmental friendly and more environmentally aware. Hopefully, most of the travelers, when they go home, they will still practice the same kind of, conservation and sorting out their garbages.
Stephen, is it all right if I just want to ask, so I know we've been talking a lot about sort of rural areas or places outside of Tokyo, and I think that revitalization of these areas is definitely a topic that's big. But looking back at Tokyo, so when I had my properties, it was largely in the Tokyo area. With the way the rules have changed and the regulations, basically, you mentioned earlier as well yourself that now hosts are becoming basically professional hosts. They're having multiple properties, or it's more large. I think largely because of the 180-day rule, the people that are getting into it are no longer just individuals that are just hobbyists or interested in sort of the room sharing, but rather it's businesses and corporations setting up hotels. And especially in Tokyo, I think that's more the direction moving forward. How do you see the dynamic for Tokyo, for Airbnb's presence in Tokyo sort of moving forward? And are there any policy sort of changes you think that are going to happen which will change that direction?
Thank you for that. I think the reality is that in all the major cities, and it's not just Tokyo, whether it's Osaka, even Fukuoka, Sapporo, we've seen it happen that as the law changed, a lot of the more casual hosts, I think you call them hobbyists, they kind of fall by the wayside because of the conditions are so hard, like getting your neighbor's consent, getting your management corporation approval, or building unions approval. And then after you go through all the paperwork and all the hassle, you only get to host it for 180 days. Is it really worthwhile? So what has actually happened since the law has passed is, yes, more and more hosts are professional hosts. They are companies. They're running this like a business. We're also seeing investors taking over an entire building, and then converting the entire building, and then applying for a hotel license for the entire building. But they're still apartment units. They're run like apartment. Like if you check in, they will look like a typical Airbnb, complete with a kitchenette, a washing machine inside the unit, couple of rooms. It looks like a normal apartment, but it's operating under a hotel license, which is permissible for certain neighborhood where it's zoned commercial, and it is permissible when you actually have the whole building that you can convert. We're seeing a lot more of that kind of thing happening, but we still want to go back to the founding days, the original DNA of Airbnb. So we're having a lot of conversation with the national government that say, hey, you passed the law in 2018 to address some of this concern. We believe over these few years, those concerns have been very well managed and very well mitigated. It's time we relook at your 2018 law. And it's also up for review because the law has a clause in there that says, I think by this year, actually, in 2023, it's supposed to be reviewed. So we're having that conversation with the central government to say, let's look at some of the ways that we can make it easier for ordinary people to host their homes, because that's really what it is about. You don't have enough rooms in your major cities. You don't have enough space to build more hotels. Maybe this is the supply that will help you capture the tourists that you want to capture.
Back to environmental concerns, you don't want to build more and more hotels and concrete monsters, right?
Yes, I think for us, that's our belief, and I think, I can't speak for the Japanese government if that is something that is a priority for them.
What are some of the wish list items on, the regulation change, if you could, like in a realistic manner?
I think the number one thing that we don't really like about the current regulatory framework is that everything is paper-based, which is kind of ridiculous. I mean, you guys are professionals. You live there. You've been through it. It's just a whole bunch of paper, a lot of papers. So even for our hosts who are locals, who are Japanese, who live here, they always call this out as their number one frustrations, right? All the licenses, renewal, application, all of those are paper. We've been encouraging them to digitalize as much as possible. In the state of New South Wales, for example, in Australia, the entire registry is online. So they build an API which allow any platform operator to connect to that API. And the application, once the host put in the application, it goes live. And as the hosts do their listing through our platform, our system will ping the central registry to check whether it's valid. If it's valid, the hosting process, the listing process continue. If it's not valid, you get blocked. So that is something that is very big on our agenda. I've actually personally spoken to the digital minister, Mr. Taro Kano, and say, hey, look, if you're planning to digitalize your bureaucracy, can you please start with this? This is a big problem, So that's something which is our number one bugbear among our hosts, and they want us to solve it. I think the neighbor consent, getting your management corporation approval, or I think we call it the building union approval, that is something that we would like it to be reviewed, to make it a little bit more reasonable, make it a little bit easier. Right now, it's a little bit hard. And then the third thing that we have been asking the government to do is to perhaps take back some of the authority that they have delegated to local government to add on more conditions. Okay, so Kyoto, for example, is one of those that is really, I know where they're coming from, but I also think they have gone a little bit too far, because they require that the host be physically located within 20 minutes by walking from their property. I was like, dude, seriously? What's the difference between him walking and him driving? If he can reach me by driving within 20 minutes, it's not going to make any difference, right? To you, why did you have to specify that? So I think all of these kind of conditions that sometimes, we feel is a little bit unreasonable, is going a little bit too far. We would like them to be reviewed and reformed.
Can I put something else on your radar then, Stephen? Is that there's been a lot of talk about the digital nomad visa that has been coming through. And this is really to try and spark some entrepreneurship, some, people who are living as digital nomads to come and spend some time in Japan. And
time and money,
exactly. But also the innovation and all of that, and like using Japanese infrastructure and all of those good things that digital nomads do. Now, someone like myself, because of these 180-day rules, I actually actively go out and look for digital nomads because their bookings are for 30 days or more. And that means I'm not having to be on, I don't have to report with my 180 days. And that's how I operate my business. So the thing is, I would love to be able to market directly to digital nomads through the Airbnb platform. However, even if I get a 30-day booking on Airbnb, I still get cut off. If I booked 180 days, I get cut off. And that 30 days, even though it's not technically a minpaku, booking, I still lose that ability to market. So I market offline.
But wouldn't they also have to give you the ability to then sign a lease for it not to fall under the Minpaku regulation? There has to be a lease agreement in place, which I don't think is something that booking platforms provide, right?
That's the question.
Anyone over 30 days, I have a lease anyway, and that I do that directly.
Yeah, but not via Airbnb. So how would they monitor that, I guess?
Stephen, I'll leave that question to you.
Short answer is that we don't. The longer answer is, again, the laws are less than ideal in this respect. Again, it's an ongoing conversation that we have with the government that, it makes no sense. People are staying longer. We share with them that 1 in 5 of our booking on Airbnb for the last 2 years is for more than 28 days. Yeah. We have a lot of people staying longer on Airbnb. And you see, the law for longer stay is a different set of law. And that goes into the real estate broker law. For us as a platform to intermediate any kind of stay that is more than 30 days, we as a platform need to have a real estate brokerage license. So that will complicate the way that we operate our business, because right now we don't have that real estate brokerage license, which is why you got cut off. That's the reason.
Right.
And we do know a lot of hosts like yourself who then take the transaction off platform.
No,
so not ideal.
No, I'm not taking, like, anyone who books on Airbnb, they stay on Airbnb. Airbnb have done their marketing to bring me that customer. I'm not one of these people who try to, save myself a couple of bucks by going direct. I think that's a very poor way of respecting the relationship. So what I'm saying is that I'm marketing off platform. The people who are booking 30-day stays are still reported. I still have to report those stays as 30 days off my 180 days of the year to the Hokenjo, because they've been booked on Airbnb, because Airbnb are reporting that data as a stay. And that, to me, is like, well, hang on, they're not Minpaku. They're not Minpaku, but I still have to follow the law. So that's a bugbear as a host, as a professional host that I have, and I just wanted to put that on your radar because I've got you here, and I don't want to make you uncomfortable. But
No. It is actually on our radar, because we have been having a conversation with the central government since last summer. Because last summer I was in Japan for 2 months. And I ended up explaining to a lot of the government officials that I met, what exactly am I doing in Japan for 2 months in a stretch? I say, well, I'm doing what a lot of people who are traveling to Japan are doing. They're staying here for a very extended period of time. And your laws, in whether it's visa, whether it's the real estate brokerage law, the Minpaku law, all of this are not reconciled properly to cater to this group of people. You need to think about it. So we have been advocating for this digital nomad visa with the Japanese government for a long time. I can share with you that there are a lot of momentum behind wanting to do this. At least the tourism folks, they understand this. We now have to convince the immigration folks that it makes sense. I think that's as much as I can share in terms of the ongoing conversation that we are having with them.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's above my pay grade, so I appreciate that someone else who is way smarter than me and like way more connected with like being able to talk the language of politics is handling that. So,
our partner, the immigration lawyer, seems to feel the same way. Every time I ask him about the digital nomad visa, he said, "Yeah, maybe someday."
I think there are a lot of interest at the local government level. So I know that Fukuoka recently hosted a digital nomad visa.
Yep.
And Mayor Takashima actually turned up in person to greet these 30 or 40 digital nomads that were staying in Fukuoka for that 1 month. And the entire event was actually co-hosted by the Fukuoka Convention and
The Visitors Bureau?
Visitor Bureau,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah, yeah. I went out to meet them when they stayed in a bunch of places along the coast all the way out to Itoshima, and I
Right.
went to meet them in Imajuku. It was a nice group of people. It was great chatting with them.
Yeah. So yeah, we need to have more of this kind of grounds up, cries and say, hey, you need this, because the travelers want to do this, and the local businesses would love to have this. Because another interesting aspect of the people who live and work anywhere, people who stay longer, their spending pattern is very different from those people who stay here for just a weekend or a week.
Mm-hmm.
They will tend to really go local in their spending. They are not going to be all going to Ginza to have their meals. That's it. They are actually going to be spread out into the local community. If they're staying in Nakameguro, that's where they're going to get their coffee. They're not going to go to Ginza. So in terms of dispersing and spreading the economic benefit that you can get out of tourism, we actually believe digital nomads are the ones that can actually help you spread it out. And it's a big number. 20% of my bookings are for a month. That's big
Sustainability
numbers.
is a big thing for digital nomads as well. I had somebody who was running a bit of a digital hub for nomads in Japan on another podcast for the other company, and he was actually surprised when he did his own research that I think somewhere under 70% or 60 something percent of his membership were female, number one, and number two, one of the top concerns for them, exactly as you said about your guest, was sustainability and environmentally friendly stays.
Yeah.
How are you working with other platforms to do these sort of policy changes?
Ooh, good question.
Are you guys all aligned and working together, or is it, there's no synergy?
We are aligned when our interests are aligned. Our policy interests are aligned. So I'm a member of a group called the Asia Travel Tech Industry Association. All the big names are there. Our competitors are there. A couple of the airlines, Amadeus, Skyscanner, Agoda, Booking, Expedia. These are all members of that grouping. And using that grouping, we are able to work on policy issues that are of common interest to all of us, and where we have aligned policy position. So that's at the Asia level, and then also at the local level in Japan, there is the Japan Association of Vacation Rental. So plus a few other local companies, we formed this association, and again, that's where we use it as a platform to share best practices, to align interests, and then to be a same voice that we can use to engage with the government.
It's a perfect example of capitalism making some much needed social changes, I think. I think, Stephen, we probably kept you long enough. Does anybody has any final questions that you want of Stephen, or any last statements that you want to tell our listeners, Stephen, yourself?
Well, not a statement, but I think I just want to take this opportunity to thank all our hosts in Japan. I know they've gone through a lot. Some of you here have been through it personally. You've gone through a lot of changes. I hope that we will continue to be good partners to all of you as you grow your hosting business. And also to any listeners on your podcast who are thinking about, getting their hands on a beautiful Kominga somewhere and becoming an Airbnb host. Don't feel like you have to do this by yourself. There are a lot of experts like the three of you on this call. And there are also a lot of host clubs across Japan that can provide you with the peer support. And then last but not
network,
least,
yeah, that's a very good idea.
And the last but not least, we're here to help. We can only be successful if our hosts are successful. So hopefully we can all have a great 2024 and beyond.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your time, Stephen, and everybody else.
Yeah, thank you so much. This was really great. And again, I just want to express my gratitude for you fighting the good fight because for hosts like me who are serious and who actually believe we are doing good things for the Japanese economy, for the Japanese society, and even though I'm an import, I take it very seriously, and I thank you for that support. So please keep up the good work.
Yeah, same
Thank
here.
you.
I know it's certainly an uphill battle, specifically in Japan. So much
See my way ahead.
appreciated. We appreciate the hustle.
Neil's got no hair,
Yeah.
Thank
I
you
think
very much for your
when
time.
when I come back in 2024, I might end up looking like you, my friend.
20 years, this is what happened. And then with 3 kids, it's a combination. Stephen, thank you so much, mate.
Thank you very much.
You all have a great new year. Thank you.
You as well.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. So there you have it. Steven Liew, Director of Public Policy for the Asia Pacific region at Airbnb, and an all-out nice, not to mention super savvy dude. Hope you've enjoyed the interview and conversation with him. I know I sure did. Now, before we go, we're also, as always, going to tell you and also link to our other sponsor's website. That's Hiroshi Shimizu, immigration lawyer and administrative scrivener. If you're thinking about moving here on a more permanent basis, or you're already in Japan on some sort of a temporary visa and you want to switch to a longer term or permanent one, or if you're considering setting up a local company or a branch office of a foreign company and you've got any sort of business or visa related inquiries, or even if you just want to find out what your options are on any of these topics, feel free to contact Hiroshi Shimizu. You can find him at japanimmigrationexperts.com. And he can help you set up a company, apply for any kind of visa, or just provide you with the best advice and extremely affordable consultation related to these topics. And he's already done that for many of our listeners. So feel free to reach out to him. Again, that's japanimmigrationexperts.com, and you'll be well on your way. And that's it from us for today, folks. Hope you've enjoyed this episode of the Japan Real Estate Podcast. Do share it with your networks, and please let us know what you think. So leave us a short rating or review on the iTunes Store, on Spotify, or just drop us a line in the comment section or wherever you might have found this episode. We love hearing from you. Hope to have you with us again next time, and until then, have a great day or night ahead. Yoroshiku.